What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Mic Check podcast. This is T-Word, the People's Champ, checking in with a quick little update. We're going to be talking about the ongoing saga between Stephen Fulton and Naoya Inoue, as well as the 122-pound division in professional boxing. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend, and share this across all your social platforms. We really appreciate the channel support, and we appreciate the growth that you've been allowing us to have over the last couple of months we've been doing this. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so what you have at the 122-pound division is recently crowned undisputed bantamweight champion Naoya, aka the Monster Inoue, moving up. He's become ranked as the number 122-pounder in the world, followed by Marjan, aka MJ, as well as Stephen Fulton, that's number 3 and number 2 respectively. That being said, MJ is tied up in a match that he's going to have to defend his 2 belts, the WBA and IBF, and Stephen Fulton is going to be in the position where he needs to figure out what he wants to do with his 2 belts, the WBC and WBO. Now, that being said, Monster Inoue was the WBO champion at 122 pounds. It was the last belt at 118 pounds. It was the last belt that he picked up, and he actually became super champion, which means he's able to challenge the champion at the division above or below where he became super champion at. With that being said, he has an automatic mandatory bid that he can enact at 122 pounds, and that puts Stephen Fulton on deck. Now, the number 1 contender in that particular division is going to be Ra'eese Aleem, who has been calling out the champions in his own division, and he's even laid down the gauntlet to say he's interested in fighting Inoue at 122 pounds as well, as a welcome to the division. So those are actually 2 really good fights. I'll talk about Ra'eese Aleem versus Inoue at a different time. I do want to stick to the script and stay focused on Inoue versus Fulton. Now, a lot of people are starting to make their videos and make their rounds about what this matchup looks like. And for me, I would like them to go ahead and announce the fight before I actually give a breakdown and analysis. But I do want to talk about the potential of the different matchups within the division and how it can affect the time frame for Inoue versus Fulton. So basically, I'm thinking because Inoue has shown his strategy and approach has been the last few years to fight twice a year. He's also been one to only seem to want to be in title fights, whether he's putting his own belts on the line against a mandatory or some type of challenger to take their belt, or, he's been moving up. So his last, I believe, 19 fights have been title fights, and he's got 18 knockouts in those fights. I think the only one he didn't win was the first one against Nonito Donaire. So that kind of tells you what his brand is and what his approach has been and what he expects to do here at 122 pounds. The thing about it here is a little bit light work because you have 2 champions with 2 belts each. So he don't even have to chase around 4 guys. 1 guy's already tied up. So the obvious fight here is Fulton versus Inoue. Now, I think that there's been some misconceptions on the viewers of this channel that believe that I personally don't want to see the fight. I think there's some people who don't want to see Fulton see the fight. But my perspective has been whatever makes sense for legacy, your pockets, and just for whatever you want to do as a champion. You do have some flexibility to fight whoever you decide you want to fight within the confines of what's mandatory, what things are allowed as far as like, can you work around whatever promotional hurdles? You got to do what makes sense. At the end of the day, it is a business. I think that the biggest hurdle for this particular fight is how they're going to work out the promotional aspect and then location. I feel like that will be a really big sticking point that might bog down the negotiations between the 2, because from a money standpoint, a lot of people point to Japan as the best place to do this. But I think if you're Inoue's people, and if he fights anytime in the US, he's exclusive to Top Rank. He doesn't have those other hurdles that exist in Japan. I believe that creates a dynamic of, what does Bob Arum want to do? Does he want to still pay and secure the fight, but then still keep it in Japan? But if he wants to get Inoue to become the bigger star over here, you have to get him into American time zones, fighting when people are watching boxing. Even if you somehow make it a Saturday afternoon or something like that, you've got to find a way to get that fight in front of more eyes to raise his profile over here, especially moving up divisions. If he's going to conquer, 6 or 7 or 8 divisions, similar to Manny Pacquiao, you got to get into that American market. And I think that's a big stepping stone. And to me, that leans to maybe you're going to sacrifice some of the financial gain now by fighting Fulton in the US, especially because he's also already the champion. So as the challenger, you make a concession with bigger fish to fry down the road. Think of somebody like Errol Spence, who went overseas to fight Kell Brook, and he made the bigger sacrifice initially because it paid off for him down the line. I think Inoue can do the same thing. Now, obviously, Spence wasn't as accomplished as Inoue is coming in, but that doesn't matter when you move from one division to the next. You start from scratch. If you think of Terrence Crawford, he understood he was starting from scratch. He was undisputed at junior welterweight. He moved up to 147. You're back to zero. Not really zero, but you have no belts. You're a contender. And until you get a belt, you kind of accept certain terms and certain things that align you with opportunities down the road. And I believe that it would serve Inoue a great deal to do so. The fight that Fulton was going to have with Brandon Figueroa obviously is off. Figueroa is going to be fighting Mark Magsayo at 126. So that dynamic is off the table. So as we get back to Fulton's side of the equation, his options aren't really there. He either fights Aleem or he fights Inoue. One of those guys is going to be either considered his best challenge or at least his mandatory challenge, or both. So I believe that it's time for him to make that decision and make the call. And, you know, my last video I said, we're waiting for Inoue to make that decision. We're waiting for him to say, yes, I'm at 122. He made it official. I'm sticking to my word. I'm calling for Fulton to make that fight. His option to fight Figueroa is gone. So you got to make something happen, man. I need to see you in there with the best challenge. I believe you are a competent competitor to go in there. And I don't think all the advantages that Inoue possessed at the lower weight classes is going to carry or are going to carry into these higher divisions, because these are bigger people who can withstand more punishment, meaning it's going to rely more on your boxing to set up your power versus just overwhelming your opposition. I even talked to some people about the depth of talent. I watched a video recently where the gentleman, he gave a very detailed description of why he thinks Inoue will win, except there was a little bit of a slant. What I will say is, when you're down in the lower weight divisions, you're looking at 300 to, let's say, 1,000 people in a division. And really, it's about 750. 300 to 750 people, active fighters in the division in the world. So moving between those divisions and getting to belts just like Bam Rodriguez, it's a lot easier to do than if you get into, let's say, 122, where now you're looking at 1,200 competitors. If you look at lightweight and welterweight, there's over 2,000 active competitors that get a ranking in those divisions. I mean, obviously there's a number 1,995, but it's still 2,000 guys. These are much deeper divisions where there's guys that are fighting and don't really fight really skilled people, and they've got 25 fights under their belt. You can't get to 25 fights at 122 or 118 or 115 and not have fought at least 2 or 3 champions. So if you understand what I'm saying, you could get there. You can get to a title shot in 5 fights at 122 or at 118 or 115 or even lower than that. If you're just a fairly decent fighter, you can get into a title fight really early. So I think that Inoue has benefited from that, and not to take away from his achievements, because he still had to win. But I think it's just a little bit easier to get all those different weight divisions when you don't have a lot of different people. The depth of the division just isn't there. So I would love to get your thoughts on my input here today, and tell me what you think about those 2 potential fights, Aleem versus Inoue, as well as Fulton versus Inoue. And obviously, I would love to hear which one you'd like to see first. I don't think Inoue needs a welcome to the division. He could go right in and fight for a title, but I'd be interested if he'll go ahead and, if MJ's tied up somehow, go ahead and fight Aleem as well. And then next year, go ahead and fight for undisputed at 122. That would be a pretty historic thing, you know, undisputed in 2 divisions within 2 years. That would be pretty amazing. So I'll be interested to see what y'all have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been T Word, the People's Champ, for the Mic Check Podcast. Until the next time, I'm out. Peace.